Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, David Rippy, and he's here today to share with us his book, The Immortal Soul, The Journey to Enlightenment, Case Studies of Hypnotically Regressed Subjects and Their Afterlife. Now, have you ever wondered about past lives, lives in between lives, or soul council meetings? Today's special guest, David Rippy, is bringing us to the doorstep and threshold of what lies behind our mortal states. Now, many of you know David. He is an inspirational author and speaker who helps people live their best lives. At the age of 25, in the midst of beginning a career at a Fortune 50 company, David's life changed dramatically when a car accident left him paralyzed from the shoulders down. Despite this life-altering injury, he formulated a vision for his life. He became determined to fulfill his ambition to become a money manager and did. He went on to have a long and successful career working for both Merrill Lynch and the Vanguard Group. After achieving his dreams, David wanted to help others reach their goals and live their best life in spite of facing the greatest hardships of their lives. So let's welcome to the show, David Rippy.
Well, thanks, Marianne. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to discussing life after death, among other things.
Well, thank you, David. My goodness, what an honor it is to have you here to talk about this. And I have to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I've always had a curiosity myself. I grew up in a standard Midwestern upbringing. I attended a Presbyterian church when my parents had time to take us. And kind of always had that curiosity. I really had no knowledge whatsoever of other religions like Buddhism or Hinduism where they believe in reincarnation. So growing up in the Midwest, we didn't hear anything about that. And the older I got, I kind of discovered probably in my early 20s, I discovered Edgar Cayce and, some other people out there like Dolores Cannon and Brian Weiss. And, I always thought there was more to just this life we're in now. And kind of sought out a long journey of not only educating myself, but starting to do some past life regressions when I was in my early 20s personally. And saw remarkably different lives, different from the ones I'm leading now. An introverted person back in 1860 outside of Lexington, Kentucky. Looked totally different. And I said, wow, is that really me? And the second time back to this pretty well-renowned past life regressionist. The same life, just different clips, different visuals of that life. And I felt myself sort of absorbing almost that personality for the first 2 weeks afterward. I felt myself a little more introverted, a little more reclusive. I'm usually a pretty outgoing person. So I did see, kind of that feel of that person's personality as well. So fast forward to the third regression, these are about 6 months apart and, a whole different life, living up near Rhode Island, spent summer vacations at Cape Cod and things like that. And was a female in that life. So that was a whole different ballgame than what I didn't expect. Then we started doing our own past life regressions on people, which started out at first sort of more in the pain realm. I'm paralyzed from the shoulders down. I was in a car accident in my early 20s. And that was another thing that kind of led to the exploration of the soul. Are we immortal? Do we have more than one life? Because I thought to myself, here I am, 6'2", about 190 pounds and athletic and all that. And next thing I know, I'm sitting in a wheelchair at about 4'8". And I said, wow, what a change of environment. And, is this it? Did I choose this life or is this all I wrote? I'll just have to make the best out of what's left. So that kind of started that journey. And then the more I read, I learned a lot more about the different ascended masters that came back and spoke of reincarnation. And what I find interesting is that, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, but if you go back to 553 AD under Emperor Justinian, well, that was the year they took reincarnation out of the Bible. So he had leaned on about 165 church elders But prior to that, the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD, and all the way from Christ's death, they spoke of reincarnation. Saint Gregory, Basilides, Origen, all the early church fathers. And then after 553, it just sort of disappeared from our understanding. And, we're talking 1470 odd years that, most people aren't aware of that.
And now you see this kind of reemergence of people who, with the Buddhist traditions being a little bit more popular and understood, people are looking at reincarnation as possibilities. And you hear people that are going through different situations that, possibly happened in a past life that are affecting this life, and, going through hypnosis and discovering these things. It's really remarkable.
I can speak to that a little bit if you want me, Marianne. I've had people have come to me with pain that was undiagnosed conventionally. They had been through the MRIs, the CAT scans, the specialist, and they still couldn't figure out why we had this pain. They couldn't trace it back to an injury, maybe playing, sports, whether male or female in high school or college. So nothing to really attribute it to. No car accidents, nothing. So one girl came to me, an occupational therapist, about 28. This is about probably 6 months ago, and said, I have, she wanted to do a past life. That was one of her first priorities. And, she said, Dave, I have this sciatic nerve issue in my left leg, and I can't get over it. I've done this and this. And like I said, she's an occupational therapist, so she's well aware of the healthcare field injuries. So she came, I said, well, we can look into that as well. So after about a couple of past lives we uncovered for her, I said, let's go, if there is one, let's go to the life that is a source of this pain that you're experiencing in your sciatic nerve. So anyway, next thing she's doing is painting me a picture of a revolutionary battlefield where she saw herself in uniform. She saw herself getting shot with a 50 caliber muzzle ball right in her left hip. So that dropped her right there on the battlefield. She was traumatized, obviously bled out, died. And that memory that we uncovered for her led to this leg no longer having a sciatic nerve issue. In other words, I find that the first time they uncover this in a past life regression, it's shocking. They're seeing themselves lying there. They're dying. And they see their, like their spirit come out of their body, their dead, dying bodies. So that's, so what can happen though, the more they relive that, the more, and also of course during the session we're telling them that this no longer affects you. It's a past life. You don't need to be impacted by this. It shouldn't hurt. And after they watch or listen to the recording, 3 or 4 or 5 times, that pain just keeps dissipating, just keeps going away. Until finally, it's almost like all of us have watched a horror movie at one time or another. I mean, we can all recall Friday the 13th with Freddy Krueger. I think that's the one. But anyway, what happened was that the more you see that traumatic event, the more you visualize, the more you're there and feel it, the less impact it's going to have. It's like anything we see too much of. It kind of numbs you for a while. And we can also work on creating new pathways in our subconscious, and that's what happens next. So what happens is your mind, as it takes in light photons, or your eyes, your ears, they're converted, into some type of a perception of that event. What we find is that photons will take the path of least resistance in our subconscious. In other words, it's like electricity. You're always going to find the shortest path to get to where it wants to go. Same thing with memories like this, or negative traumatic events. We wear grooves almost in the record of our mind. And we're going to go down that groove because it's easiest to be on. And until we create new pathways of positivity, pathways that lead us away from these traumatic events we've experienced, whether in this life or other lives, we're going to continue finding ourselves and our neurons and everything going down the same path of negativity.
It's amazing how hypnosis can be so beneficial for something like that. And a lot of times people are walking around with pains or phobias and different things that they have no idea where it came from.
No, exactly. And, I think it'd be interesting. It's not really a topic that has been thoroughly explored. I know that I think Dr. Michael Newton did a little bit with it. Brian Weiss did a little bit with it. But Not to any great scientific degree. I know there's a very interesting studies that they do at the Department of Paranormal Studies at University of Virginia, where they went back and looked at 5,000 children over 30 years. And these children were 3 or 4 or 5 years old, and they're coming forth with these stories of, I'm in a plane, I'm in World War II, my name is this, we're crashing outside of this island in the Pacific. They describe the planes, and they went and they've researched this over 30 years. A lot of very scientific, Dr. Ian Stevenson and they studied this and eliminated, guessing. Maybe, the kid's so smart, he saw a movie when he was young, who knows. And they went, or his coach, whatever. But they went and discovered this. They even found children today that were at 9/11, 20 years ago. And these students, 20 years ago. And there's, 5-year-olds today, born up to 7, 8 years old, saying, hey, I was working for D.H. Blair. I was on the 105th floor. And we were hit by a plane. I trade bonds and stocks for this company. It's my job. And I jumped out of the window and came out of my body before it hit the sidewalk. That's what I remember. These are coming out of 5-year-old minds. So it shows you, this is University of Virginia, so they did a very thorough study on past lives and fascinating stuff.
So when you uncovered your own past lives, you briefly went over some of the effects that you've had. How did that affect you in its totality, having all those done?
Well, I really enjoyed it. I mean, after that, I just thought, wow, we've all had more than 1 or 2 lives. Most of us have probably had 1,000 or more. So what it did was it kind of uncovered things that, even, and I think all of us can find this. If we just looked at things we enjoy, if we're good at music, we're good at art, where's this talent coming from? Is it just part of this life we're in? What I found personally was that, in that 1860 life, I decided not to fight in the Civil War, is my recollection, and I went to California to look for gold. Because I've always thought, wow, that's a neater way to make money than, tilling soil in Kentucky the rest of my life. So that was my mindset then. So what's interesting, even in this life, before I did the regressions, I thought to myself, well, I'd like to be in a position or a career that would give me a chance to do very, very well and not maybe do the 9 to 5, for 30, 40 years and retire. So I went to Merrill Lynch and got a job as a stockbroker. So, and I did that I managed money at Merrill Lynch and Vanguard and retired early. And I saw patterns of that, let's get rich quick, or let's at least have a chance to do that beyond playing the lottery. So even my career choice in this life was kind of influenced, I think, by that 1860 life, looking for gold. Secondly, what else can I say? There was other instances around the Lexington area that, that impacted me as well. My parents grew up farming. I've always liked being around farms. I didn't quite know why. I enjoyed the ocean as well. But I always felt kind of that kinship in a barn, and I think a lot of that might have stemmed back from that life as well. So I think if we all look at different hobbies, quirks, phobias, traumatic things we can't explain, and the positive things, the art, the drawing, the writing, the singing, the running, the working out, doing certain sports. I think a lot of us can find traces that lead back to other lives where we, we are affected by it negatively or positively.
Yeah, you can see where, you get people who are really good at math or really good at whatever sport or swimming or what have you. And it's almost like they're kind of born with this ability. And so it's interesting to look back and see, if that really did truly come from a past life and how it's influencing this life.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that, we're souls. Just because they took it out of the Bible 1,480, 70 odd years ago doesn't mean it's not real. All those Synod masters talk about it. They talk about it. And, it started with Plato kind of 300 and 400 BC, talking about the immortality of the soul. And a lot of the early church fathers in the Bible adopted a lot of his thoughts on the soul. So I think what we can find, if we look at ourselves, whether it's in, talent we uncover, something that kind of laid inside us and all of a sudden it becomes less dormant. I think if we look at that, we look at other situations where some people are just amazingly gifted at 4 or 5 years of age, whether it's a Beethoven or a Mozart type. I think that we will see that life, they brought those gifts down in this life from other lives and other talents they've had in the past. And I think it extends to there's some people in the world who just have gifts. I've reached out to what I consider some of the gifted psychics in the world, like the won international challenges. They see ghosts. They can look at your body and do it like an X-ray. Just amazing, amazing talents. And a lot of them say that. I ask them, I say, hey, you've done this in the past, like maybe in Greece as an oracle at Delphi or something. And they all say, yes, I did this. My grandma was good at it. And I've had other lives as a healer and other lives as this. And I see a lot of people I've hypnotized that are in the healthcare profession. We bring them back. And one example was, a 30-year-old in this life. She goes back, tell me about World War I, how she was a British and she was married to a soldier, from England. And how he went off to war and passed away. And she spent all the way up into the 50s and 60s, helping people as a nurse. Starting out, of course, in mass unit type situations near the battlefield when she was in World War I. And recounting this graphic and this visual scenes about how, she got older at 30 and then 40 and then 50, then her grandkids are getting older and her granddaughter's going into nursing also. But that was from another life. That was the life prior to the one she incarnated now as an occupational therapist. So I think a lot of careers are carried forward doing things you enjoy. I also found out later from, top psychics, I didn't say, hey, do you see in your lives? They just came out and say, I see you with the Knights Templar and, you were a banker then and things didn't quite go as well as you would have expected or hoped. And then they tell me like this. I didn't tell them what my field was. They said, I see karmically you are helping that. You're giving back. You're working at Vanguard. There's no conflict of interest. You don't pay a salary. We're not trading stocks or bonds at commission rate. Where there might be a little bit more of a self-interest. Vanguard has no self-interest. It's all driven by salaries, and it's very objective as well. So they kind of felt that maybe that was covering some of that karmic event. And, these people didn't even know what my position was or what I did. And what's weird is even prior to that, I saw myself watching like 2 weeks before I even called this person who won the 2013 and 14 challenge in the U.S. Top psychic. So I thought, wow, that's something I'd really like to get hold of. And I was watching movies with guys running around with white robes and red crosses on their chests. I was fascinated by the Knights Templar. So we can find a lot of strange things. We can find that if the soul is immortal, which I believe it is, if there is higher dimensional beings above us, we can call them angels, spirit guides, whatever. A lot of times we're going to be guided. And I think that's what a case. I mean, you can look at any of the top, James Von Prock, for instance, top psychic in the country today commercially. He's written books on Ghost Among Us and how we can be influenced. Dr. Michael Newton did over 8,000 past lives, over a 40-year career, was an atheist going into the first 5 years. And he said after the scientific protocols he used, he said, you know what? I can't deny this soul experience is real. They live. And they reincarnate and they come back with similar gifts. And he talked about a lot of that in his book. It was really fascinating stuff.
What is one session that has really stood out for you?
Probably was one in the book Immortal Soul that we wrote. There was actually one that stood out more in my follow-up book to that. It's called Meeting Jesus. So I'll give you the first on the Immortal Soul. So that's really the book we're talking about today. And one of them was a person who came in, a female, about 28 years old, had a background in English, state college up here in Pennsylvania. And she recounted a life after she was brought down into a deep superconscious hypnotic state. And I say, what do you see? So once we brought her down to that, her eyes were, inside her mind's adjusting, her third eye's kind of flipping up visuals for her. And she sees, I see a tank. And I didn't even think about any military type thing. I go, really? What, a water tank? And she goes, no, a military tank. And I go, really? So I thought, wow, we have, this could be a fairly interesting story. So she recounted a life as a Nazi. She recounted a life to where she took others' lives and that she was in this tank battalion. She knew words in German. She started speaking like in coordinates almost toward the middle of the book and or middle of the chapter. And, told me right off, I'm with the Third Reich, 18th Battalion. We're a group. We have a Panzer tank. It's the latest in technology. Panzer means armor. So just things she had no clue about. And I had no really idea about. I'd heard of Panzer, but I didn't know much about it. And how they were at the Belgian border and what year it was and what date it was and how they got hit by the British. And they blew up their tank because their tank had one flaw, and that was the gas tank was a little bit exposed in the rear, allowing a British or American tank to hit that and blow it up. She described the life how she got blown up in the tank, was flown across it, her leg came off, her jaw got hit, and that's all she remembered. Next thing, she's standing outside the tank as a ghost. And then I go, where do you go next? And she recounts, she goes, I go into a faceless, mute darkness. There's nothing but darkness. I go, really? Why are you there? We, of course, pretty much figure out she's a Nazi. We kind of figure out why she's there. But I want to hear what she said. And she said, because I took others' lives. And I go, really? Okay, what else did you do? And she recounted her sins in that life and said, I put the Nazi party above my family. I would have killed my family if I was asked to do so by the Nazi party. So here she is, this 26, 7-8-year-old, female discussing life as Lieutenant Herzog, who got blown up in a tank at the age of 23, gave her the children's ages, their names, their wife's name, the parents' name, where they lived. Just amazing detail. And then while she was in there, right after that, she goes, I put myself in this like purgatory type state. So hell, and I've had people kind of question this with me occasionally, but light is where we want to strive toward. There's light and there's dark. We all know that. We've all been afraid of the dark as the sun comes up and down in nighttime stories. So that's why it's been kind of beaten in our biological, superconscious, subconscious states, is that the dark can represent danger and stuff. So anyway, she was a Catholic. A lot of Germans are Catholics back then. So, she put herself in that. She said, I'll be here for an age. It's 1,000 years. And I go, wow, that's a long time. We don't have, of course, we don't have that much time on our hypnotic session to hypnotize you for 1,000 years. So I go, let's go to the end of that darkness. Go to the very end of that darkness and tell me what you see. And she started trembling. Her voice is shaking. And she says, I see a pool of light. So I go, really? How big is this pool? She goes, it's like a small lake, a pond. She described it a little bit. And I go, what's going on? She goes, it's engulfed me, and I'm in the middle of it now. And I go, what else is going on? She goes, it's vibrating. And I found that very interesting. And I'm not going to go down the path now, but I did put a chapter in the book on the universal laws. And the third universal law that's immutable, you can't change it, is the law of vibration. She said that's one of the big laws, the universal laws. It runs everything. It doesn't matter what religion you are, everything. So anyway, she's describing this vibrating light that's engulfed her body, her soul. And I said, what do you look like now? Because now she can see herself. Before she was in darkness, couldn't see herself. She said, I'm not missing my leg. I go, what else? She goes, my jaw's not broken. I go, what else? I go, what is this light? Thinking it's a healing light that's been beamed down. Who knows where it's from? She goes, it's God. So that was kind of an interesting thing. And she said, he forgave me, but I have to atone for what I did. I have to atone for the pain and traumas and fear that I caused in others and deaths I caused in others. So that's where that karmic lesson comes out in that story. So I found that interesting. And then she went on to describe humanity. And totally unannounced, totally unasked. I didn't ask her what about this age or this, what we're in now. She started telling me about the future and how we're in the age of Aquarius now. And that over the next 40 years, we will see more people being born in different, very specific spots all over the globe, like light beacons, which are going to help awaken up humanity. And she said those born under the Aquarius sign, you might have friends under that, you might be under that, but they said they'll have the ability to cross the barrier. And I'm thinking, barrier? And I said, what barrier? She goes, that's what separates us from God or from source. So they'll be more psychic, they'll be coming, they're going to be in all different cities, states, countries. And that's going to be over the next 40 years as we enter more of what a lot of people consider, an awakening. And that's going to take place probably over the next 40 years going forward.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, it must have been very interesting to have that discussion and going through that with the session that you're having with this young lady, and how is that affecting her life today? Is she having to, because if we look at the story in its totality, she went through these things, she's forgiven, but she has to make an atonement. Is this something that you see often?
No, I see him going in front of soul councils to where they didn't pass certain lessons like patience or ego, and they're going to come back down and have another life with cosmic amnesia. They're not going to tell you why you're here to learn patience. You're just going to have another life to learn patience. So it really, it could have. She's a strong person in this life. So to uncover, yes, of course, a life as you're a Nazi back in the 40s, it doesn't sound like a very cool thing to be, compared to like maybe a monk or something. But what it did really impact her to that great degree that I noticed going forward. I mean, it is tough information to hear. So it's almost best sometimes to say, hey, that memory's fading out. You've lost track of, that. And I think that works better. We kind of took that approach that, I didn't want a 28-year-old to be scarred with a life as a Nazi. There's a lot of, that life is fading. It has nothing to do with it. You learned your lessons, But there's always going to be that possibility of the karmic event, obviously, going forward, which I think is a real thing. It didn't put her in a therapist's office or anything like that. So, and you talk them down. I mean, you're saying, look, that's another life. That's over. You've had 1,000. Yeah, sure, that was a bad one. Not a good one. But look at these other lives you've had. Look at the positive things you've done. It's a balanced story. And yes, that's, and the thing is also don't forget that unless she signed up to be awake in that next life, she could have another life as a, poor, starving person in Africa or it could be in Palestine, who knows, to where, she's getting shot at. There are positive things, obviously, a lot of positive lives where you've done this, and helped others, and you'll come back and do it again. It could be as a nurse, it could be as a doctor, it could be as somebody a little bit more into the esoteric, or not even esoteric, but more into the alternative possibilities where it would, involve more cool things like meditation or hypnosis or crystal healing or shamanism. I had a lot of people come to me that, wanted to explore themselves. They wanted to come. They might add some pain too. Of course, we're going to work on that first. That's always important. It makes it a lot nicer doing a life without pain. But we also going to explore some of these talents. And people that have recounted lives to me as shamans and Indians, and you go back and they'll have a trail of these type of lives, but they still have to do all the lives. And I believe if you look at different things and things I've read, I'm not going to be able to tell the exact source, but there's probably 64 archetypes that we're all going to experience, whether it's a slave, the warrior, the leader, the doctor, the king, the scientist. Because as we go forward, unless we have this knowledge, these experiences in our soul growth, how can we really understand or even get closer to the mind of Source or God or Brahma or Yahweh or whatever you want to use for God, your religion? So we really need to understand all these things. We have to live these things, good or bad. Sometimes we're not going to get the best look at life, and I've seen those, just like I recounted a little while ago. But there'll be good lives in her to balance that. There'll be lives where she spends it maybe instead of directly getting shot at, like she had done herself as Lieutenant Herzog. Maybe it's a life where she's a nun working to help try to save Jewish children from being rounded up. And then she's eventually caught and spends 10 years in jail or something. So these are the type of things that you see can also balance karma.
It's fascinating how this all comes together, and there's reasons for so much when you really get down to what the root is with all of this. Well, gosh, David, I mean, we could talk forever in regards to the Immortal Soul. I found it to be a completely fascinating book. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work? And also, are you, because I know you're extremely busy and sought after, are you still having hypnosis sessions available for people?
Well, we don't do it as much on an individual basis. I think with the capabilities of Zoom, et cetera, we're looking at actually a program to where we can let 10 or 20, 50, or 100 people experience a past life regression at the same time. Now, will they all be able to share their individual stories? Of course not. But through guided imagery, we can have that, and once they get off the recording and what they see in their mind, they can write it down. And I think also you'll find that, and I've done this before, you can do group healings too. Because I use mostly a golden light approach, which, comes down inside every cell. So obviously, if you have golden light coming in every cell, taking away the redness, the darkness, the trauma, you're going to benefit from it. I don't care what your injury is. I've had an MS lady we did up in, it was actually a favor for a friend of mine in California. He was like, he was an executive producer on some shows, but he says, I got this friend with MS. She's been living with it 30 years. So I hypnotized her, and bang, her pain was gone with the MS after that. And she recounted a couple of amazing lives. And what she did find out, what she didn't know, that she had actually taken it, that she admitted this. She said, I took this life of MS now because I didn't pass patience or ego my previous 2 lives. And when we hypnotized her, you could see this energetic spirit. She's out riding horses at 87 back in the 1850s. Just amazing woman and strength, and just bang, to slow her down so she could get through patience. She decided to take a life with MS, which would definitely lead to patience.
So, David, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work and be part of your community?
Well, there's 2 ways. I would go to my website, davidrippy.com, DAVIDRIPPY.com. We put videos on there for pain. We put them on there for stress, for trauma. A lot of people are having a lot of issues with COVID, et cetera, right now. So I got about 14 recordings on there. You just click it on, put your earbuds on. They're free, and try those. And I would go to David Rippy on YouTube, because right now we're starting a series, not yet in the metaphysical or on the Immortal Soul, but on people that have had traumatic events, whether mental, whether emotional, whether physical. As I mentioned earlier, I was in a car accident. I'm paralyzed from the shoulders down. So I'm doing videos on how to set goals, how to hire assistance, how to find acceptance, how to learn meditation, which for me became very much a plus in the last 10 or 12 years I've done meditation in a lot of ways. And if you look at Buddha, he said, they go, what'd you gain from meditation? And he goes, it's not what I gained, it's what I lost. I lost stress, I lost fear, I lost anxiety. And I found in my personal days that it makes sense. So I go to David Rippy on YouTube and kind of follow along and, subscribe to that. We're doing probably about 20, 25 videos on how I got ahead, with a high-level spinal cord injury after getting in a car accident at 25. And then we're going to delve into another series on, on meditation, hypnosis, past lives, and things like that.
Well, David, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, I appreciate it, Marianne. And, it's people like you out there that kind of open minds, and that's what's important.
Well, thank you, David. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your book, The Immortal Soul. The Immortal Soul is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and select indie retailers, and of course you can get it on Kindle. Again, if you'd like to connect with David, you can at davidrippy.com for more information. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.